And if you thought the Odyssey movie couldn't get any worse, well, you were wrong. You were very, very wrong, because what Christopher Nolan has just announced puts the entire premise, the entire idea of this movie into question. And I'm not talking about the transgender race mixing casting that everyone's been talking about. We're over that. We're not talking about this. What he just announced makes this pale in comparison, because at best, these characters were minor characters. Okay, she's meant to be Helen of Troy, but Helen of Troy in the actual story doesn't show up as much as you think it does. The story revolves around other characters. But this change that Christopher Nolan has just made is regarding the entire theme, the entire premise, tone, intent of the Odyssey, of Homer's great Odyssey. But let's explain the Odyssey a little bit so you can understand the context of where I'm coming from. The Odyssey, as many of you may know, for those that you don't know, is one of the greatest works in human history. It is written by Homer, an amazing poet, amazing writer, written thousands and thousands of years ago in the 8th century BC, and it explores the Greek culture at the time. What they were wearing, what they were listening to, what they worshipped, the gods that they worshipped, the wars that they were fighting in, the food that they were eating, the customs that they abided by. It is essentially a time capsule of their culture. You can read it and you can see it's like a screenshot of their culture at the time. It is an amazingly written piece. And so Christopher Nolan, the great director Christopher Nolan, decided to do a movie about this, and everyone was excited. Everyone thought he would do an amazing job. He would do it justice, because he is one of the greatest, if not the greatest, directors alive today. He's done movies, I'm sure you know, The Dark Knight, Interstellar, Oppenheimer. Oppenheimer was amazing. He did a great job with that. So everyone thought he would be able to capture the essence of the Odyssey, the culture at the time, do justice by the Greek people. Instead, what does he do? Well, for the first time in Christopher Nolan's career, well, maybe not the first time, he decides to go off the rails and just do his own interpretation of an entire civilization, one of the oldest civilizations' cultures. So the first interpretation that Christopher Nolan takes the liberty of hijacking is one of the most important concepts of the Odyssey story. Okay, the Odyssey, as you know, is written by Homer, but Homer actually puts himself into the story, not literally, but in a writing sense of way. To make the story flow, he introduces the mythological concept of a bard. All right, a bard is someone that sings tales in a tavern and talks to the travelers. But in this story, the bard is the narrator. He acts essentially as a mythological narrator of the entire story, tying different parts together, narrating things that we need to know for context. And he essentially is how Homer imagines himself inside the story. So he is Homer. Now, how does Christopher Nolan choose to honor this legendary poet, this legendary bard? Well, he casts the infamous rapper Travis Scott. Okay, I don't have anything against Travis Scott. All right, he's a great rapper. He's made some great rap songs, but rapping and the bard of Homer, a literary genius, you're gonna cast this? Not only that, Travis Scott has an original song inside of the Odyssey that will play in the outro and throughout the movie. I don't have anything against rap or Travis Scott, but in this cultural heritage piece about Greece, we're gonna have rap. Did rap exist back in ancient Greece? Maybe I didn't know about this, but listen to what Christopher Nolan has to say about this.
I didn't even get to ask you about Travis Scott, but for the next interview, really cool to see him in this film.
Yeah, very cool. Well, to me, the idea of oral formulaic poetry, that feeling to most academics for the last 100 years or so, that's the basis on which these things were handed down. And it's such an important part of the film.
It's the first line.
So I'd worked with Travis before, and it felt very apt to have a rapper, playing a bard in that way.
So he's saying that poetry, oral poetry back in ancient Greece, is analogous to rap of today. That may or may not be the case. I'm not familiar with poetry and rap, but this is a movie about ancient Greece. They didn't have rap back then, not about modern rap and its roots or whatever, but in response to that criticism, that criticism about this is, I mean, this is Travis Scott's songs. He does songs like Fang, where it's very popular song, but it's rap. It's modern day rap. Nothing against it, but it's not ancient Greece. So in response to this, Christopher Nolan says that orchestras didn't exist back then. We can't use an orchestra for the Odyssey. Did rap exist back then? Well, I'm sorry. Was Fame playing on Spotify when Odysseus sailed the ocean? I don't think so. And if you think about orchestras, they're also analogous to the instruments that they had at the time. That's where they originated from. So I don't understand this concept of tying in poetry to rap, but you can't tie in the instruments that they did have to our modern day wind instruments that make up an orchestra. It seems like you're kind of cherry picking history here and deciding what you want to go on and what you don't want to go on. But beyond that, I mean, that's the first thing that he did. All right, so he insulted Homer by casting him as a rapper, but then he goes on to do even worse. He goes on to insult their actual gods. All right, so the goddess of Athena, I'm sure you've learned from Greek mythology back in the day, is revered by the ancient Greek people. She was the goddess of war, I believe. They made statues of her, grand statues. I mean, look at these beautiful, beautiful statues of her that they made. Many, many statues. This was a sense of pride for the ancient Greek people, a literal god in their culture to them. And who does he cast in that role? Zendaya. All right? Interesting choice. And what about the Roman soldiers, all right, or the Greek soldiers, or whatever, the brave men who were protecting their homeland, who went through years of training from a very young age. I believe they started out at like before they were even teenagers. When we were going to elementary school, they would have been training their entire lives. How does Christopher Nolan decide to honor them? Well, he casts a transgender woman who is less than 5 feet tall to play these Roman soldiers. Interesting choice. Look at her here. I mean, that is a tiny person. Even by women's standards, that is a small woman, but she is meant to be playing a man. Interesting choice once again. Look at her in the lineup. Oh my God, she's a whole head and shoulders shorter than everyone else, including the female. Why are they? Why is this? Look at this cast. What is going on here? That is our god, their god, Athena. That's a Roman soldier or an ancient soldier. And that is the most beautiful queen, Helena Troy, or Helena de Troy, of the ancient times. This is how Christopher Nolan decides to honor them. Look at this meme here. That's how she will be loading up the Triboulet, I believe. Is that what that's called? Not exactly sure. Not caught up on my Roman, and lands as a pebble. Not caught up on my Roman weaponry names. But furthermore, as if all of that wasn't enough, they decide to go after Homer, his character, the person, the literal person, Homer himself. They try to cancel him in modern day, the 3,000-year-old poet who has literally changed the course of human history through his writing. They're trying to cancel him. Listen to what the actress for the Helen of Detroit decides to say about Homer.
I'd be like, so Homer, how do you feel about the screen time given to these women, considering how little you spent with them?
The screen time giving to these women? First of all, Homer didn't in it. There were no movies back then, all right? But let's say that she was talking figuratively about the amount of writing time that he has given to women characters in the movie, which is what she is referring to here, looking all smug like she really did something. Homer was 3,000 years ago, literally a different time period from us 3 millenniums ago. You're trying to assassinate the character of the greatest writer, possibly one of the greatest writers in history, by calling him gay and lamenting about how he doesn't give enough screen time to women. Interesting. Very, very interesting. Look at this chart of best to garbage castings. Garbage, she's down here, obviously, with the transgender Elliot Page. Average Zendaya, I would put that as garbage as well. As the queen, as the queen. Travis Scott as the bard, as Homer himself. I'm not sure about that. I would agree with this casting right here. Let me show you this video of Anne Hathaway. Absolutely gorgeous. Look at her. I mean, this is the wife. I believe she is meant to play the wife of Odysseus, the wife that he fights all these wars to come back to. And yeah, I think that's a pretty good casting. I would fight a couple of wars for that as well. But let's leave you off with this live count of the trailer as of today. Look at that count of dislikes, 90.2% dislikes to 73,000 likes. And after all the evidence that we've gone through, the character assassination of Homer, I think you know why. And that's all I have for you guys today. Make sure to leave a comment down below about what you think about this character assassination, this betrayal of Greek culture that the Odyssey movie is. Make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you guys here again later.